So welcome to the Selling Later Real Estate Panel Atlanta edition. Today we're going to be talking with Ilana Weismark, who is our staging expert on the panel. Ilana, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So we always like to start our panels with having you share in Atlanta your favorite, most quirkiest, lovable thing that you will find in Atlanta that you won't see elsewhere.
So one thing that I hear a lot from people that come from elsewhere, sometimes overseas into Atlanta, is when you fly into Atlanta, it's a sea of trees. And I've been taking this for granted living here because I see trees everywhere. There's always woods to walk into. And I think it's very unique to most cities, you know, like it's just a unique thing to Atlanta compared to other cities, how green it is and how wooded it is. So it's definitely something that most people who notice love it when they see it.
Right. It is beautiful. I flew to Atlanta pre-COVID. My friend lives in Woodstock, and it was the same thing when we flew in. I was like, wow, like it's just green, you know, and you don't.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and you don't get that everywhere. You know, in PA we do, but the further south you go, it's kind of like the less vibrancy.
And cities, it's all high risers and whatever. Whereas here, it's just a huge sea of trees. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. That sounds so pretty. Okay, so tell us about yourself. Where did you grow up and how long have you lived in Atlanta?
So I grew up in France. As soon as I graduated high school and college, I lived in London for a few years. I moved over and lived in Israel for a few years in Jerusalem, met my husband, came back to the US. I've been in Atlanta for about 15 years. And I have 3 children now. We live here with my husband and 15 years right around the CDC Emory area is where we live. So really in town, it's called.
Okay.
In town Atlanta.
And so in town Atlanta, favorite places to eat, coffee shop, or places to go?
Oh, there are so many. There are so many places. I actually really like Ethiopian food. And I've discovered it recently, and I really like just the easy, you know, light, flavorful foods. In town Atlanta is full of restaurants. I mean, you have so many choices. Sushi is one of my favorite. The Sushi One Plus is my favorite. Able Restaurant is the Ethiopian place I go to. It's like a little hole in the wall. I love it.
What made you get into staging?
So I used to be a teacher. I was, I taught for years. I taught for like 10, 12 years, and I taught all grades, foreign languages. So when I lived in France, I taught English. When I lived in Israel, I taught French. When I lived here, I taught Hebrew. I mean, I've been teaching all these languages. And my husband went into flipping properties and real estate investment. He then later became a real estate agent, a Keller Williams agent. And I was always itching to just be so creative. I was in the classroom, but just always so creative, so many ideas. And I felt very limited. While I could still use my creativity during school day, I always felt kind of limited in my ability to really truly blossom. And one day I said to him, I'm going to stop teaching and I'm going to do something in real estate. I don't know yet. I don't really want to work for you. I'd love to work with you, but I don't exactly know what I'm going to do. And he took me, it was my first day after school ended. So it was summer break. I was paid for 2 months. I thought I'm going to sit back, relax, take my 2 months, enjoy, you know, just find myself. First day of vacation, he says to me, why don't you come to one of my houses? You've never come to my houses to see what I do. You know, come and see. And I walked in and these people were there walking around. And I said, who is that? And he says, those are the stagers. I said, oh, what do they do? And he says, listen to them. And I'm listening. And they say, well, in this room, I'm thinking sectional, facing the fireplace, and then a rug. And then we can use the brown chair. And then we can do this and we can do that. And I'm listening. I'm like, oh my God, this sounds so fun. So they left. And I got into the car and he said, what did you think? And I said, well, I think I'm going to become your new stager. I said, how much do you pay these people? So he told me and I was like, I'm on. And so I started immediately shopping, putting together my mission statement, vision statement, just tried to start to figure everything out, what my plan was going to be, how I was going to get started. And the rest is history. So it just literally just went from 1 minute to the next. I was like, okay, I'm doing this.
Right. And so how long have you been doing this now?
Since 2012.
Oh, wow.
So 8.5 years. Yeah.
Wow. And I have to
Yeah.
ask, when you're staging, where do you put all of your stuff that you use?
So I started with I got trained, and he said, okay, fine, if you're in, you're in. I have a staging for you in 3.5 weeks. And I was like, holy moly, what am I going to do? And I went shopping like crazy. I bought the furniture for that one house, installed it. And then as it was still staged, he says, I have another one. And so I had to go buy another set of another house worth of stuff. And then house A was about to close, so it moves into house C, and it's kind of snowballed. And then every time I couldn't take one to move into another, I had to purchase more. And now I'm in a 2,000 square foot warehouse,
Wow.
and I have about 30 houses worth of stuff that comes in and out constantly. It's just very organized. It's very well set up, but I have everything is super organized because we need efficiency and we need good systems, and the infrastructure needs to be good, and the furniture needs to stay very pristine so it can be used and reused over and over again, even though we refresh all the time at the inventory. But you start in your garage, and then you end up, you move on to a storage unit, then two, then three, then you move over to a warehouse, and you carry on. It's a slippery slope, let's just say. It goes quickly.
It sounds like a dream to be able to buy all that stuff all the time and then just to keep reusing it. And so when things fade out and you look at trends, like let's talk about 2021. What are design trends that you see that seem to be most popular with staged homes or just in homes in general with designing?
I think one of the most important things that people need to remember in 2021 is to highlight a home office. Because think about it, everybody's either working from home or their kids are homeschooling or virtual schooling. Super important. It didn't used to be the case. People used to go to work, but 2021, things have changed. And having a space that you can call your own home office is huge. So that's something that we do a lot, in COVID times. And by the same token, highlighting an outdoor entertainment area is a great idea, because think about it, you want to have friends over, the only way you're going to do it is to do it outside. And so those are some of the trends that we're seeing a lot of. The one thing, I mean, the trends of designs keep on ebbing and flowing, and the truth is they haven't changed that much. People love wooden tones these days. A lot of nature comes into the houses, so you'll see a lot of plants. You'll see a lot of woods. You'll see woods in the construction of the houses. You'll see some raw pieces, some beams. The people might put in their kitchens, like white subway tiles, and then really cool repurposed wood, like that they find. So those kinds of things are really great with bringing some nature inside the house. But the home office, outdoor entertainment area, and the third one that's a huge thing, but that's always been a huge thing, I don't think it's only in 2021, is natural light, having tons of natural light. And think about it now, with people being more home, you need to kind of feel like you're outside. Like you can't feel constricted and constantly in the dark, and you're like, working at your computer, and you don't feel like you get any light. So just for people's sanity in 2021, having natural light is a huge thing. That's why I sit right by a window.
Mm-hmm.
My window is cracked. I get a little bit of fresh air, and but you need it now because you don't go out so much.
Right. No, that makes sense. And
Yeah.
then, so if I'm getting ready to sell my home, what are some things I should be doing to prepare for staging and prepping my home to sell? And maybe even tips so that it's not incredibly overwhelming.
So the most important part is to declutter, because any type of collection, any type of accumulation of stuff is only going to catch the buyer's eyes and distract them from what they really truly there for. They're there to buy the house, not to buy the things. And so decluttering, depersonalizing, I always tell my clients, you're taking yourself out of the house. You're basically turning your home into a house. It's an object. You're merchandising this object. It's no longer the place where you've brought up your kids. It's no longer the place where you have all these memories. You detach and you have to separate. And it definitely is something very hard for most sellers. But it's crucial, because for a buyer to come through and feel like the person is still very much there, it's distracting, and it might even detract them from buying altogether, because they subconsciously get a feel that this person's going nowhere. This is their home, it's not mine. I can't imagine myself in this space because that's their space. So decluttering, depersonalizing, um, updating dated fixtures is always a good idea. Repainting is always a good idea. Those are very well spent dollars that will make a big difference. The days of, I'll give you an allowance are long gone. This is the Amazon Prime society, right? You order it, you get it. You're like, oh look, what do I have here? It can't, the order arrived already. Wow. So it's the same thing with buying houses. They just want to be turnkey, and they want to entertain friends, in their backyard or on their deck as soon as possible. So it has to be ready to go, ready to move in. Those are my main points.
Common mistakes you see consumers make that maybe try to stage themselves? Is it like paint colors, crowded spaces, certain furniture pieces that are just like ginormous that make the room look smaller?
Yeah, we see that all the time. We always say the way you live in the home and the way you stage it are two different things. And so you truly need to just kind of live differently for a little while if you're going to occupy the home while it's being listed, you need to live differently from usual. You may not be able to sit in your comfy lazy boy and watch TV because that lazy boy really needs to be out of sight. It needs to be gone. You may not be able to, to have the kids do homework at the dining table every day because, it's now being displayed as a dining table, no longer as a homeschooling area. Neutralizing the colors is a huge thing. Picking the right color for your wall, and there's no color that goes in every house. You can't just say this color goes everywhere, because it doesn't. Every house is different. The light hits differently. The architecture and just the way it's built and the amount of light that comes in makes a difference. One thing that I notice people often do is they will panic about, they'll think, okay, I need to declutter and I really need to get my house ready for selling. And the first thing they work on is their garage or their laundry room or their basement. And I'm like, no. Like those are last. Work first on your main living spaces. That's where you're going to walk in. The buyers are going to walk in. They're going to see a living room. They're going to see an office. They're going to see a family room. They're going to see a dining room, kitchen, bedrooms. That's what you work on first. Later on, you can start tackling those secondary and, those last items on your list, because those are not as important. So those are some common mistakes that I see. And yes, less is more in staging, always. You want to just have very bare minimum. All you're doing really is you are highlighting the main areas, the focal points of the house. So for example, in my house, the fireplace would be what you highlight versus, any other area of the house, because that's what you're selling. That's the selling point. And we define the spaces for what they are, and we return them to their original purpose. So if you've been using your dining room as a homework room or as a playroom, there's no table, no chairs, you return the table and the chairs, or you acquire a table and chairs and you make it happen so that that dining room is now back to being a dining room and it's no longer a play or a play area.
I keep thinking about all these rooms in my house that I'm like, oh, yep, yes.
Not staged,
our playroom,
not staged.
Yeah.
Right.
The office, it gets all,
right.
It would all need a ton of work. Thank goodness we're not moving anytime soon. Okay, so let's talk about, the impacts of staging. So is there days on the market that a home would sell more or faster for more money, or is it just more the ease of selling the home? What a home that is staged versus not, what's the impact of that for the home seller?
It makes, I'm so sorry, hold on. Let me just,
you're fine.
Here we go.
Oh my gosh, you're fine.
Yeah, okay. It's a house that is staged will appeal to the largest amount of buyers because they will understand the story of the house. You're just telling them a story when you stage. How are they going to live in the space? How are they going to utilize the space? And in a seller's market like today, where there are so many multiple offer situations, houses are selling quickly, but the houses that are staged are more likely to sell quickly than the unstaged houses. It's simple, because when a buyer goes and previews 5-10 houses in one day, like on a crazy marathon Sunday with their agent, your property needs to be memorable, and it needs to stand out. And they can't be afterwards, after the 10 houses, say, okay, honey, 123 Main Street, do you remember if it had a dining room? I don't remember. Did it? I don't know. Let's look at the pictures. And the pictures now are vacant. And you don't remember the spaces. You don't remember the sizes. And so all you're left is your memory. And, often photos don't do any justice, because the wide angle lenses that photographers use make the room so big. Sometimes I walk into a room and I'm like, oh my gosh, it is tiny. And even for me, the room looked massive. And so having furniture gives you that scale of how much you can actually fit in there. And so if you see a picture online and you're browsing through multiple listings, and you're looking at it and you think, oh, this house, I mean, look at this. It's a huge sectional and 2 chairs and a large scale coffee table. This room must be big. Versus, oh, this is just a sofa, a couple of chairs. It looks like it's a really nice mid-sized room. With COVID, buyers are trying to visit as few houses as they can, because they're not just gonna go house. They're trying to not make too many trips. It's exhausting. And so the key is to get on that short list of theirs. And when you get on that short list, you've guaranteed that you're at least one of the few houses that makes it. But having vacant rooms that just look enormous, you can see the square footage of the house is 1,500 square foot. So you're thinking, okay, it's not a big house. Then you look at the photos and they look massive. You're like, okay, well, that doesn't make sense. Then sometimes you have virtual staging. And that's also something I'm not a huge fan. I think it has value in some situations, but a lot of the time, to me, it's a little tricky, because you can kind of overextend furniture, and it's no longer the right scale for what you're trying to display. So less days on market is what you're looking at. A higher price, you can possibly ask for more money when the house is staged, and often get above asking price when the house is staged, because people really want it. And the number of times I receive a phone call, I leave my business cards in my vacant houses, and I often receive phone calls from potential buyers that say, I want this house and I want your furniture. And because you've picked exactly what it was that goes exactly in this house, and it's exactly the right size, because it's a small room, but you have small scale stuff. And how do I go about purchasing it? But people pay attention. And when they make that connection to the home, thanks to the staging, you've got a winner there, because they obviously gonna love the house versus, oh, it's cold in here. I don't know where to put my stuff. Where am I gonna watch TV? They can't imagine themselves in the space.
Right. Do the buyers get to come shop at your warehouse when they email you?
They sometimes do, or they'll just buy the items from the house. And it depends if I'm prepared to part with those items or not. That's another question, because sometimes it's like one of a kind and I don't want to let them go for any amount of money. Sometimes it's something I can let go, but it's an interesting conversation when we talk about this, and it happens pretty regularly, actually. But it shows you they sold not only on the home, but also on how they're going to live in the home. And immediately they're like, oh, I want that.
Right. And, you mentioned virtual staging. I just wanted to explain, for vacant homes, there are programs now that will pretty much just from a photo drop in pictures of furniture.
It's a rendering.
Right. And for online, it gives you a sense of what the home could be. But I have to think, as a buyer, it's probably a little bit of a letdown if you don't realize that and you walk into a home and it's just totally empty.
Bare. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And you don't have those pictures to compare.
So there's value to doing virtual staging. I don't want to knock it, because I do think that there is a purpose to it. If you are in an area that's completely locked down and you really can't go preview houses, it's a good idea to have virtually staged photos, because then you can sort of get a feel for, what the house potential is. But on a general, and sometimes I think, estate agents will just get a couple of photos of virtual staging renderings, let's say for a rooftop area,
Mm.
or a basement area that's massive. Staging it would be very costly, because you're now bringing in even more furniture and everything just ends up costing more money. But just virtually staging a basement is okay. The main living spaces, people are thinking to themselves, and sometimes those renderings are very, very lifelike. Like, you really wouldn't believe that it's a computerized, picture. But they open the door and it's like, oh, where's all the furniture? Now they can't just pop themselves down on the sofa and have a chat. It's very cold. There's something very empty about it. It echoes. You don't have all those textures to absorb the sound. It smells very rough, because it's the house smell, as opposed to the furniture kind of, lowers that amount of rough smell. So most people really have embraced the staging, the idea of actually staging their houses. And we always say, the cost of staging will always be less than the first price reduction. And I think that's the one thing for all sellers and agents to hear, is anytime they take a price reduction on a house because it hasn't sold, will always be more than staging. Because think about it, it's always going to be at least $2,500, $5,000.
Right.
And depending on where you live, staging should be less than that.
Right. And so that leads me to my next question then. What are the average costs of these services? Are there different tiers? And if you have all your furniture, do you have to get rid of it, or can you kind of use what you have?
So it depends. So there's different services that I know my company provides, and most stagers will provide. Is you have the occupied staging part and you have the vacant staging part. For occupied stagings, most stagers will offer consultations, and what that means is the stager will walk around the house with the seller, go room to room, and make recommendations on what to remove, what to move, what to get rid of, what to pack away, what to place differently, what to hang, what to take down. And literally from floor to ceiling, we inspect the entire house without judgment. We don't make anybody feel bad for the way they live or the way they decorate. It's not about that. It's really about having a third party come in. Agents love that service that stagers offer, because it takes them out of that emotional loop with the seller. They need to stay very neutral with their seller, and all they need to say is, hey, I'm going to connect you with my stager, and he or she will come and do a consultation with you. My treat. Usually agents pay for that. And then the stager can come as a third party professional and give advice on what to do, what not to do, etc. I don't have, as a stager, that connection with a seller, that I don't need to. I can say it obviously kind, with a lot of tough love, but still with a lot of kindness, but I don't have that connection with a seller. Whereas if the agent comes and says, remove this, do that, take that off, they feel judged. They feel very, it's not the right interaction in their relationship. But by saying, I'm going to send a stager to meet with you, and she will tell you exactly what to do, and you're going to take very good notes, and at the end, when you've completed that whole list, you're staged. So some stagers do this as a walk and talk, where the seller writes down notes and completes the list. Other stagers will provide a report, where they basically write it all down for them. There's another option where stagers come in and take over the house. If the seller lives in the home, but literally works 70 hours a week, or travels for work, or simply physically doesn't want to do it and would rather pay someone else to do it, we can come as a team. And all stagers offer that. Most staging companies offer that, where they come as a team, take over the house. 2 stagers here, 2 stagers there, movers to move the heavy pieces around. And by the end of the half day or full day or 2 days, the house is completely staged, just needs to be cleaned, photographed, and you're good to go. So as far as the range of prices, I would say in most of the country, probably those walk and talk consultations are right around 250 to 350 is my guess. With a report, it could probably run to about 500. And that depends on the area, right? Because every city is different and price points are different on houses also. For the homes that are, for the homes where a whole team of people come in and take over the house, it will depend on how many people have to work. If it's 10 stagers, it adds up. But it could be, probably about $1,000 to $1,500. And then you end up, in the vacant home price point, where I would imagine most staging is about 2,000, depending on the length of time for, it starts around $2,000 and carries on as, it becomes a larger home, more rooms to stage, more furniture to bring in. And of course, luxury homes and whatever, price point, a $2 million property requires more than a $200,000 property.
Right. It's almost how many rooms do you have and
Right.
and the square footage that you have to work with. And so when you're
Right.
looking to find a stager, are there key things you should be looking for? Is it years of experience? Is it just looking at their portfolio, asking for
Right.
referrals? What are things you think make a good stager and what you should be asking?
Well, I mean, I think that we all have to start somewhere, right? And so just not having any experience doesn't mean you're not a good stager. What you do need to look for as a client is that the stager knows what they're doing and that they have an infrastructure, that they have the right movers, that they have the right furniture, that they have the right, design ideas, and they insured. That's a big deal. You want them to be insured. You want them to have really a solid infrastructure. When someone says, oh, I'll stage your house, you don't even need to pay me or pay me very minimally. This is my fun. This is my enjoyment. It's very attractive when somebody says that. It's less attractive when they bring yard sale items or grandma's old couch and they scratch your walls in doing so because they've come in and they've dragged stuff or they scratched your floors, So you got to think about that. And truly in staging is the same as everything else. You get what you pay for. So anyone who comes, the low price leader, you want to avoid, however tempting it is. When someone comes and says, I can do it for way less, you want to be careful, because what does that mean? Are they going to do less of a good job? Are they going to do it, with movers who don't know how to move things in and out safely? Are they going to tell you, oh, my mover broke his ankle at your property, now what? So these are the things that you kind of need to think about. And also, what furniture are they going to be using? It's expensive. Furniture is expensive. Decor items are expensive. And it all takes a lot of effort and time. I think a lot of people don't realize, agents included, they don't realize what goes into staging a home. And sometimes they'll say, this is kind of like in setting the expectations. They'll say, I need a house staged ASAP. Can you do tomorrow? And maybe I can do tomorrow, but think about it. Do you want me to do tomorrow and just slap together a whole bunch of things and drive over to your house, which I haven't had time to see because it's tomorrow? And then I come and this looks too bare, or this looks too full, or this is the wrong size art. There's no art on this wall, like those kinds of ideas. So you want to really do a good job of having someone that can be relied upon and who will do anything for you. And for that to happen, you need to build a relationship. And so I always say, check that the stager you find is highly regarded by other agents. So a good referral is a good idea because you've already seen their work, right? If you came to me and said, do you know a good hairdresser? I wouldn't send you to a hairdresser I've never tried before. Or a good restaurant. I would never say to you, eat at that restaurant, it's delicious. I've never eaten there, but I've heard it was great. Okay, great. That's not enough of a information. So get a referral from somebody that has worked with that stager. Make sure they have a good company, that they have insurance and an LLC, that they've got that everything is in order, and with the government and everything, that they're not just doing everything under the table. And one other trick of the trade is to check that they have a portfolio. And that's the hard part for new stagers, is to actually acquire those photos. But we always tell them, be creative, redo your own shelves in your bedroom, go to your best friend's living room and redo their, like, completely undo it and redo it and show what you can do. But sadly, a lot of stagers feel the need to take other stagers' photos.
Oh,
And
really?
so on the internet, sometimes I'll see my work portrayed by someone else as their work. And we do that, stagers do that all the time. And new stagers tend to think that just posting a photo of somebody else's, oh, it's a great living room, let me post that and say, pretend it's mine. It's not, right? So that's something to be on the lookout for. There's actually a trick on Chrome of right mouse click, and I think it's check the photo or search for the photo, and it will show you if it, search image, and it will tell you if it said, for me, Ooh La La Home Staging, right? If it said this is a photo owned by Ooh La La Home Staging, then we know that's that. But if it was with all sorts of languages, that it's been used in the Philippines, it's been used here, it's been used there, and this is a photo it's a canned photo. It's
right.
It's just a photo that you can just pull off from the internet,
right? Or buy from iStock for $10.
That's right. So instead, make sure that the people have the, and possibly also you can ask, do you already have any houses that you've got staged either now or in the past that I could look up online and see your work? So there's ways to verify someone's, that someone's work is legitimate. And there is I truly believe there's plenty to go around. There's plenty of business for all of us. I don't need it all. There's about 10,000 houses on the market in Atlanta at any one time. I don't need 10,000 stagings a month. Thank you very much. But I encourage new people to have the courage to do it and to get into it. It's not an easy business to get in. It's a very expensive business to run. It gets scary at times because, you make mistakes. It's costly. It's a costly business. But I encourage new people to come in and try their best and just really just get started, because if you want to do it, there's plenty for all of us, but just do it right. And don't spite all of us that are working really hard by saying, oh, I can do it for a fraction of the price, because you can't.
Right. And you get what you pay for, and it's funny. I was talking to our Dallas panel home inspector, and he said the same thing. You're not always going to be the least expensive person, but you have to know what your value is and what you're providing. And a home inspector that charges half what he does doesn't have the certifications and doesn't inspect a lot of the things that he does. So you have to pay attention to that. And obviously we all want to make sure we're getting our value, but know what you're paying for.
You pay for expertise and you pay for experience. I'm about to hit my 500th vacant home stage in next week. And that's a big deal. 500 vacants, that's a good experience. And some stagers have staged 500 last year. But, for me, it's taken me 8 years and I'm very proud of it. But, we all have to start somewhere. And I agree with that. And I understand, giving a good offer at the beginning, but you really do need, as a client, you need to do your due diligence to know that this is not going to be a waste of your money or a complete, mistake where you end up having to pay the price of correcting it all.
Right. And fixing your floors and the dents in your wall and your,
that's right. That's right.
Things that can go wrong.
And all the days that you've wasted in the meantime in placing this house on the market, because the market is hot. If you miss that deadline, like if you wanted to go on the market on the 15th and because of a bad choice of stager, you end up going on the 20th, those 5 days may have been when exactly the right person was shopping for a house. And you miss that opportunity. It doesn't mean there's only one person that's going to buy the house, but you might miss your chance. So you don't want to lose that opportunity.
Right. And that's 5 more days of carrying the costs of having your home too, so Precisely. If you're ready and you're ready to go, go quickly. And then So for people that have questions for you, do you have a preference? Is it email, text, phone? What do you prefer communication wise?
Email would be great. Email is easier for me to keep up with. Yeah, I'll be happy to answer any questions. If they want to text me, that's fine too. But it's usually email is better for me to sort of keep an eye on it and answer as soon as I can. But I'd love to be a resource for any agent or any professionals that want to know more about how to use stages. I think there's a fear factor from agents, and sometimes they are their fear causes them not to share with their sellers the option of staging. And it can be a it can be a fiduciary mistake as an agent to not tell your seller that staging is something that will bring value to the home, will likely sell the house faster and for more money, and could avoid that price reduction. A lot of the time, agents will say, I'll call agents and I'll say, hey, I saw your house is on the market, and it's not selling. Is there any way I can be of assistance? And immediately they'll say, oh no, my seller's not interested. And 9 times out of 10, I'm pretty sure they've never asked their seller. It's they're not interested. But why are they not interested? I think a lot of the time it's fear. It may have been a negative experience with a stager before that showed them that it wasn't such a safe idea, and then they completely turned off. Or it could just be like, oh my gosh, what does it involve? Like how much more work am I as an agent going to put into it? Do I need to meet with the stager? Do I need to be there when they come to stage? Do I need to be there when they empty? So they're thinking of all those scenarios in their head when on the contrary, it's super simple. You just call in a stager. The stager sends a contract to the seller. It gets signed, it gets scheduled, designed, boom, we come, we install it. 2, 3, 4 weeks later, great news, we are about to close. Come and get your stuff back. Come and retrieve it. Goodbye. You've never noticed anybody came in, you just noticed furniture came in safely, furniture came out safely, photos look great. It doesn't have to be scary. And so I would love to be a resource for anyone that feels a little bit sort of, they want to do right by their clients. They want to ask all the questions, but they're scared, just like you said earlier, about being sold to. I'm not going to try to sell you. I'm just going to try to educate you and help you find, the right ways to go about it.
Right. And I guess as an agent, if you're that trusted advisor for a client, it's so much easier to have this conversation and to do staging before you list than when the home isn't selling, because now you look like you're wrong. Like, hey, maybe we should have done staging. You should call this person. And that's probably not an easy conversation to have and to point out that maybe you made a mistake.
Correct.
So doing it in the beginning makes such an impact versus.
Absolutely. You only get one chance to make a first impression.
Right.
And it's a shame because also people might come to see the house when it's bare and decide not to buy it. And then later on it becomes furnished, and the agent could call back a potential buyer and say, hey, or a potential agent of a buyer and say, hey, we've staged in the meantime. Do you want to bring back your client? No, they not interested.
Right.
Because they've already seen all the faults of the house. They've seen the house in its naked element. Whereas when it's staged, the eye is controlled. We control the buyer's eyes to look at the right things. It's like, hey, look over here. Don't look down here. Look over here.
Ignore that spot over there.
Yeah. So we're not allowed to hide the flaws of the house, but we can minimize the negatives by controlling the people's eyes and making them look at what really is what their perceived value of the property. Like, it changes the perceived value of the property. So, you're right. Not staging right away is a mistake. And you definitely, as an agent, you don't want to go and be like, hey, Mr. Seller, I know I never mentioned it before, but I'm thinking staging might be a good idea. Or why didn't you tell me that before?
Right.
So, the fiduciary duty of an agent is to say it, just like they would say, you should really change the light fixtures. You should really change this. You should really repaint. I would recommend better curb appeal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You say all those things, and I recommend staging. In fact, I have agents who will not list the house unless they know the seller is going to stage it with me.
Oh, wow.
Because to them, they know they're going to waste their time. If the house isn't staged, they know as an agent, and it gets really stressful as an agent when the house is sitting and sitting and sitting. And the seller is like, okay, so what are we doing next? What do you
Right.
think? What
Right.
do we do next? How do we fix this? Like, let's go. And the listing is getting staler by the day. It's like, oh my gosh. And as an agent, you lose sleep over it. So, instead of that, just say, this is what I recommend. These are the steps. And this is the stager I recommend. Now, if the seller now says, no, no way, I'm not spending on that. I'd rather paint the house than stage. That's totally fine. And it might be the right choice. But at least as an agent, you've already expressed it. You've done what you needed. And then you can say, you don't need to say, I told you so, but you can say,
Right.
okay, right, cool.
Right.
Let's do
Remember
this.
that thing we talked about earlier? Let's revisit that. Like, let's
That's
talk about
right.
that again.